real-life show on YouTube, Into the Fringe, where we discuss lost civilizations, UFOs, cryptids, unsolved mysteries, megalithic structures, extraterrestrials, interdimensional portals, time skips, and more. Don't change that channel, because now you are leaving the mainstream and entering into the fringe. Well, greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and welcome to Into the Fringe number 112, where our guest is Stephen Bassett, who is a political activist, disclosure advocate, and the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind extraterrestrial-related phenomena. He has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of disclosure, the formal confirmation by heads of state of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He has lectured around the world on the political implications of UFO/ET phenomena and given over 1,200 radio and television interviews. PRG's advocacy work has been extensively covered by national and international media, included being featured on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, in the Washington Post, and the New York Times. In 2013, PRG organized and conducted a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington. In November of 2014, PRG launched a 2-year political initiative out of Washington, D.C. that injected the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. Bassett has appeared in many documentary films, and his lectures and interviews are well represented on YouTube. Welcome back, my friend Stephen Bassett, to Into the Fringe.
Cardinal, it's great to be with you. Always.
Good to see you, sir.
Okay, I've had my moment of cool. It's enough.
You're always cool, man.
Look,
I'll tell you what's not cool. The
what?
Weather around here, triple digits.
99 where I'm at. First, I want to apologize. My production values are a bit, how would you say, under par. I'm traveling. I'm visiting family, so. But I'll be back in my National Press Building studio this weekend, and interviews thereafter will have advantage of all my lighting equipment and other special stuff. But for now, it's basics.
Well, until then, we can fake it pretty well.
Sure.
I
could put a background in, I suppose. I'd thought about that.
Well, we could do one of these type deals. So we've got
whatever you want to do.
A little bit of, cozy.
Yeah, throw in the odd graphic. Wait a minute. Let me just check something here. I'm kind of learning. Let me see if I got something here. Oh, wait a minute.
Unless you have the green screen already set up, it usually doesn't work.
Oh, it's based on green screen. It's not an insert deal.
It fakes it pretty well without the green screen, but everything kind of shimmers in and out. But you look marvelous.
I look marvelous.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
You will look marvelous.
So, what do you want to know?
What do I want to know? Well, first, I want to say hello to some folks in the chat. Monster Huntress Room, greetings. Matt G is here. Canadian Spider Man is in the house. Ari is here. Wayutan is here. Nicholas Horton is here. And while we are waiting for others to roll in, I just wanted to thank you for spending some more time with us tonight. I know that you're very busy being on the road and everything. We have a lot of ground to cover tonight. And while people are rolling in, I wanted to let folks know that we have some rare DVDs from the 3rd annual Laughlin UFO Mega Conference to give away. If Twitter will function normally, which I don't think it will, and you must be in the chat at the show, at the end of the show, to be eligible to win. So, Steve, I'm going to start out with a bit of a rant because I want to be right up front here.
I'm personally sticking to the language of UFOs, even though I know your preferred acronym is UAP. I find it to be a military / intelligence / psyop acronym that pertains solely to military encounters and whether they constitute national defense security threats that take our eye off the ball regarding ongoing civilian sightings, encounters, physical trace cases, landings, primary and secondary effects on the environment, people, and other animals. I'm sure we'll have a debate about the nomenclature, but as far as I'm concerned, to some degree, from the Navy pilots' Pentagon approved testimony, from the 2012 release of degraded Tic Tac footage from the Nimitz and the Roosevelt, to the absolutely nothing burger that I think Lou Elizondo turned out to be, are at least a counterintelligence distraction campaign aimed at the American public, and at best, some sort of psyop against same, with a heretofore unknown outcome. Likewise, the congressional hearings, which have been dry, boring situations that reveal only that the real meat and potatoes can only be examined in a SCIF, a secure classified intelligence facility, no phones, no notes, etc., that cannot be disclosed to anyone without a proper security clearance, that with as much talk about transparency doesn't seem to be any more revelatory than the 1968 congressional hearings 55 years ago. Your response?
What is going on now is so messy, so complicated, so confusing that it's like a Jackson Pollock painting. you got a bunch of people in an art museum looking at a Jackson Pollock painting, and so the tour guide asked one of them, "What do you see here?" The person gives them a total explanation, and then they go to the next person. "What do you see here?" Right? Kind of like that. There's also a great scene in a Woody Allen movie. I think it might have been Manhattan. I'm not sure.
Love that movie.
Yeah, and he's trying to get the attention of a woman who's looking at this painting, and he says, "Well, what do you see?" And she sees this and that, and everything's kind of wonderful. And she says, "Well, what do you see?" I see the impending annihilation of all of the human race and whatever. I don't see it quite that way. Let me tell you why. All right.
Okay.
That's why I'm here. By the way, before I continue, something important. I have seen all the movies on your wall there. Pretty much. I've seen thousands, and that includes all of those. It was either that or read the great books of history. What can I say? I went with the sci-fi. Okay, look. Let's just start with UAP. The UAP trajectory, as I know pretty well, because I've been dealing with that, talking about it for 15 years or longer. It's an activist thing. It was an activist thing from the get-go.
I did not know that.
Absolutely. Activism is very much about language. So you're trying to get the government to do something it doesn't want to do. And it pushes back. It pushes back with propaganda and all kinds of clever techniques in order to, quote, keep what it wants secret, do what it wants to do, and so forth. And there's language associated with it. And that language is designed to serve the government or the authorities' position. This is true of every activist movement ever. And in the case of this issue, which is, of course, the matter of disclosing or not disclosing extraterrestrial presence, one of the things the government did was to pick a target. In this case, was the wonderful acronym UFO, solid, great, funny, good, unidentified flying objects, cool, and just point all the ridicule at it, paint it, right? It's like painting graffiti on it. Just paint it, drench it, ridicule, whatever, so that anybody that touched it, used it, spoke it, was instantly associated with that ridicule and stigma.
Little green men, yeah.
Little green men is another example, but this was far more inclusive because UFO really was the term that you use or went to describe this thing, this no matter who you were, that was the term. There was really no other term. And so once they had stigmatized it, then that was it. What moment you utter UFO, you are disregarded. You are tossed over the wall of the intellectual ghetto, I like to talk about, and nobody cares what you think. Very effective. Now, there's other terms in other activist arenas that I could refer to that are similar, but I'm not going to because they're pretty awful terms. And so that was the language of the truth embargo. So the idea was this: is there something else we could use to refer to this phenomena other than UFO? Yeah, unidentified aerial phenomena, which perfectly describes it as well and means exactly the same thing. But when we're trying to introduce that term in the early aughts, it doesn't have a stigma. You say UAP, people go, oh, you're one of those people? No. So it allowed journalists, even politicians, academics, whatever, to even refer to the issue in whatever context and not be attached to the stigma. It was an activist maneuver to improve the language. There are other areas of the language we've made progress on. And so, and it ultimately helped. There was a very special moment, and I assure you, she didn't just think this up on her own, but in the campaign in 2016, Secretary Hillary Clinton had to go on and give a number of interviews in very secure and fairly safe environments regarding her interest and background in the subject. I'm going to take 90% of the responsibility for that because I was all over the press on this, pushing them very hard, generated 400 articles, which are linked on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, if you go find them, in which this connection was made. And then they were calling up, asking for responses from John Podesta, from her campaign, and basically they were getting nothing back. I knew that because they were calling me up and saying, hey, won't even answer my phone call. But she knew that the wolves were at the door. So did John Podesta. And so they had to do some limited hangouts, and they did. Mm-hmm. And they went on Colbert. They went on Jimmy Kimmel. This is not the same thing as sitting down with 60 Minutes, I can assure you. It's in advance, scripted. They picked their slot, whatever. Anyway, late in the campaign, she went on Kimmel, and he brought up the subject again to her. And she said, Jimmy, there's a new term now. It's called UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. And to me, that was the bell ringing, right? Yeah, we did it. We did it. She's basically saying to people, look, that's the term, UAP. That's what the term I want to use. Now, let's go forward from 2016 to 2023, 7 years. Over the last 3 years, there have been 3 tranches of legislation passed by the Congress. The term UAP is all over them. UFO is not there.
That's
true. That is not an accident. All right. Now, but here is the punchline, right? This is what I love. Okay. And before I go on with that, I forgot. I got to give your audience an important heads up here. There are 2 things they need to do right now. And I should have told them a little bit sooner. But first, this is critical. You got to go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, or Google my name, Stephen Bassett. It'll come up. You'll see it, paradigmresearchgroup.org. That's it right there. Go to resources up there in the upper right, hover over that, slide on down to Print Media Archive, click on that, and then you'll get a flash page. Click on the Print Media Archive and go through to the main archive. You're going to do that right now. Feel free. Go right ahead. This is great. I love sharing. Okay. Scroll down and then click on that center link. We're right there. PRG Media Archive.
I see it.
Boom. Okay.
I was looking at this earlier today.
Yeah. You got it yet?
Yeah.
It should be coming up. Maybe it's taking a little time. It's a big file. It's a very big file. When it comes up, what you'll see is a project I've been working on since 2006. You may want to click it again, Cardinal. Just one more click, left click. PRG Media Archives. It's in red there. Well, whatever. People at home can do it. It's a big file. It is an archive now of 15,000. There it is. 15,000 media articles. Leave it right there. 15,000 media articles, triaged or curated rather from the media coverage of this issue. And by curating, I mean I'm eliminating small publications, not particularly significant, some websites, a lot of paranormal press, things like that. This is essentially professional journalism. 15,000. This year we'll set a record. This year we're at 1,231. We will easily get to 1,700. It's the most ever published on this year in general, counting all coverage, domestic, foreign, English language, and so forth. probably the most articles in history for a single year will be published this year on this subject. And so if you go there and you just start reading those articles, you will get a huge education on what is going on because the media is covering it extensively. This page can also be word search. So you can pick a term like David Grusch or Congress, and then just the whole page, it'll just click down, and you can search for certain things. But the point I want to make is this. In the last 2 years, well, actually going back 2.5 years, the stigma on the term UFO started to evaporate. It is virtually gone now. And so here's what's cool. UFO is back. People are using it everywhere. Members of Congress, the journalists, in the articles, whatever, even the odd academic.
I suppose there's a case to be made that there's a whole generation of kids that never heard UFO. All they ever heard was UAP.
True, but they also were not, the younger kids are not, they're not really too affected by the stigmatization of UFO. And so, again, for that and other reasons, UFO is now back. It can be used. It's okay. You can be a member of Congress. You could be a scientist, and you could say UFO, and people are not going to jump up and go, well, you're crazy. No. Why? The stigma is gone. That is how powerful the processes underway are. They have actually turned the language around. Not everything. You want to start talking little green men, sorry, I got to go. Don't need it.
Right.
Don't need
I'm going to check out. Yeah.
And there's some other stuff, but overall, UFO is back. So,
okay.
And now ET extraterrestrial, they're still a little shaky about that. So we're hearing some other terms like non-human.
Now we've got biologics,
non-human, but I assure you, extraterrestrial is also being used, and extraterrestrial will soon be fully destigmatized as well.
I have to say, Steve, I really like the non-human intelligence moniker. That's kind of a non-origin specific word that covers just about everything.
Unfortunately, it includes dolphins, whales.
That's true.
Orcas, who are pretty or almost.
But they don't have opposable thumbs, so we're pretty sure it's not them flying.
So it's non-human intelligence with fingers. I know what. Right. Extraterrestrial will get back. So, but as far as the rest of what you're saying, well, now we're getting into the weeds, and this is tricky. There is another thing that I would like you to bring up if you can.
Sure.
And this is very important. It's a simple link. Bring up liberationtimes.com. One word, liberationtimes.com.
Okay, let's see what that gives us. Can't be reached.
You may have spelled it wrong. Liberation. I think you got is that a 1 instead of an L? I can't tell. Yeah, you got a misspelling.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Liberation Times. Scroll down just a little bit. Click on that heading. Okay, People versus Pentagon. Boom. Okay, scroll down a little bit. Okay, just get to the beginning of the text. Stop right there. Okay, this article is absolutely fantastic. And the reason for that is because of the author, Christopher Sharp. Christopher Sharp, who writes for the Mirror, UK, he's UK-based, created Liberation Times as a UAP genre-specific publication. That's all he covers. He writes about 90% of the articles. I can say with confidence that this is some of the absolute best reportage in the world on this subject. Liberation Times, Chris Sharp. And as I've said in some texts, if he was U.S. based and a U.S. citizen, I'd be putting in a vote for the Pulitzer Prize. This article, boy, and I can also bring it up, gets into a whole range of things and really describes the ups and downs, the ins and outs that have gone on with respect to the congressional response to the Congress's, the DOD response to the Congress's actions and so forth. And it's kind of a tight but well written history. And I recommend people read this article. In fact, I recommend they read every single article on their Liberation Times, which is right there on that website. You can read them all. Of course, they're all linked on my Paradigm Research Group print media archive. And what I can tell you that I see because of my experience that others might not see is not what one might immediately take from this. An initial straightforward response to this article is kind of very much reflecting some of the statements you made in your initial rant.
Mm-hmm.
But I see something else. I see exactly what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I've said many times, the whole process that really begins when the To the Stars Academy and the Magnificent 10 come forward publicly as private citizens to launch that entity as a public service corporation to engage the issue in multiple ways and multiple fronts, which is fine. But the people on that list were quite exceptional. They were virtually all military intelligence complex professionals. And I instantly knew, right, that I'm going to get rid of this. I can't do it. Okay. I instantly knew kind of what that meant. This was a major play on a private basis by people in the military intelligence complex who had come to the conclusion that the truth embargo's days needed to end, and they were going to go and end it. And they had been planning this in 2000 and maybe certainly 15, and certainly 16 and 15. It might even go back to 14, but let's just say 2015. Putting it together. Tom DeLonge got involved, and we don't have to go there. It's a long story, but still he got involved and ended up being the quote front person for this the Magnificent 10. And they come out to the Stars Academy and they make the announcement, which is fine and significant, and I was very impressed. But so what? What are they going to do? Right? What you gonna do? And they quickly showed us what they were going to do. Several of them approached the New York Times. I'm sure this was intended from the beginning, and provided information for major New York Times stories. They provided to the New York Times 3 pieces of gun camera footage, which showed unidentified aerial phenomena from our planes. Now, people say, well, it doesn't prove that those entities in those craft are ET. No, it doesn't. That didn't matter. What mattered was it was gun camera footage. Mm-hmm. And there's never been a formal release of any gun camera footage from any country in the world. And there are thousands and thousands of these, I assure you.
Yeah.
And so, whoa, that was a threshold that had been allowed to be crossed by the Pentagon, which ultimately confirmed that, yes, that was gun camera footage. Yes, we allowed it to be released. And yes, it was shot from our airplanes. Okay, so they delivered that, and they delivered the story of ATIP, a program, a semi-secret program that was put together because Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, wanted it. I can assure you the people at the Pentagon did not. Right. But he was willing to get the money and say, like, what? You're going to give us, $22 million? Fine, we'll do it. Right? We're not going to make it a USAP. We're not going to give it an underground facility, but we'll do something to keep, to service what you want. And they tied it into some other work that had been going on around Skinwalker Ranch, whatever. This wasn't the United States government's UAP research program, I assure you. All right. And so they brought them that story. And all of that came out in 2 New York Times articles in the print, December 16, December 17, but then more importantly, on their website, which of course included the gun camera clips, which have now been seen, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of times. It's probably
all over the world. Yeah.
Right? Okay. Yeah. And that is what they did. And when that happened, I knew exactly what was going on as far as I was concerned. I knew it was supposed to have happened in 2016. The election went a different way, but they came forward anyway. I was still in Europe. I had to get out of Europe and get back to the United States. Meanwhile, all of my colleagues are on shows here, shows there, getting calls, all kinds of calls. And I was out of the country. I'm going, yeah. And I finally got back in February of 2018. However, I did get to go to Moscow and give an interview there that had never been done before, or at least on the disclosure thing. Whatever. Point is, I got back to the United States and tried to get involved. But I knew what was going on. This was going to be a disclosure maneuver The goal was disclosure, period. And they were going to do what needed to be done. Now, the question is, what needed to be done? I believe they're doing exactly what I'm about to tell you, and that was their intention, right? It wasn't, oh, we're going to come forward and say there's ETs here. What? Plenty of people have said that. High-level people have said that. It didn't make a damn bit of difference. If you want to move this issue forward, if you want to see a paradigm shift in the world, the heads of state have got to confirm it, period. Not a colonel, not a sub, the undersecretary, the president has to do it. And so disclosure, as I've defined it for the last 20 years, is capital D confirmation event. It's the words from the president's mouth in a, it could be a written thing, but no way president is going to do that. And so that's disclosure. That's what they were going for. All right. Now, and they knew how it had to be done. And this is how it had to be done. The government, of course, has always known about the ET reality, has been studying it, researching and spent a fortune on it and all of that. We know that. The researchers found that out a long time ago. Mm-hmm. The fact that the New York Times doesn't write a front page story about that is not our fault, right? The New York Times has gone along with the truth embargo, as has the Post, has had every college and university in the country and almost every scientist in the country and so forth. They went along with the UFO truth embargo, right? ET truth embargo, just right. Like they go along with the nuclear weapons program and all the missiles we make and everything else, and the nuclear submarines, because it's national security. Okay, fine. So what is going on then? I mean, if the government already knows, is the effort to somehow get the government to still go look and find out what they already know over again? I mean, what is the game plan? The game plan is simple. How do you go about giving the government the assistance it needs and creating a basis for the government to end a 75 or actually now 77-year lie? Not just a lie, not a fib, not a white lie, but a 77-year misrepresentation of some of the most fundamental information in the world, some of the most implicative information in the world. How do you get the government to get out from under 77 years of that lie, that propaganda, that misrepresentation, and so forth? How do you do it without creating chaos, a lot of victims, lawsuits, embarrassment, destroyed legacies, political damage, and everything else? How do you do that? How do you just say, oh, wait, just go tell the president to just come out and say, hey, look, we've been lying all this time. This ET's been here. Nothing we can do about it. Sorry, we didn't tell you sooner. I see you. I got to go to, Camp David for a week or two and chill out. No,
right.
That's political catastrophe. Yeah. And it's also going to be disruptive. How do you do it? Well, you do it exactly what they have done. First, you raise public awareness even more, because you are people that have worked inside the military intelligence complex, unlike me, unlike most of my colleagues, almost all of my colleagues. And you start talking about the issue, giving out information that you can without violating the law, get the excitement up, raise the interest level, get articles in the paper and so forth. They did that. But then you've got to start engaging the Congress. And the Congress, of course, is extremely skittish on this. And so how do you engage the Congress? Send them emails, letters, sit outside their house, in the street, with a sign up saying, disclose. Now, you start taking witnesses up on the hill to start briefing them, people that have inside information, people that have information that is very significant, briefing them privately in their office, whatever. Not to be discussed, not to be given to the press, educate them, firsthand stuff. You could just tell them, go read all of Richard Dolan's books and watch all the podcasts. You could do that. But what you want to do is bring some pilots up there, bring some witnesses up there, and let them talk to them, let them get it in person. This went on for a long time. Many, many, many meetings were held. And one of the person I believe most responsible for this was Christopher Mellon. I believe he was organizing it, directing, and I think Lou Elizondo probably had some involvement there. But Mellon's background is all about politics and national security. He's worked over, and he's worked on both sides. He worked at the DOD, he's worked over at the Congress.
Was he the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense?
Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence.
Yeah.
So he is setting up all these. So essentially, he's filling up the brains of a lot of members of Congress, but not just any members. He is going to the committees that we know will have to deal with this. Senate Intel, House Intel, Senate Armed Services, House Armed Services, might have got his way down to appropriations. And that's a lot of members. That's
so it seems like I've got this whole thing turned around. Not only did you and the activist community present UAP as a way to wipe the slate clean, but now we're getting deeper into the people that do have a need to know.
Well, yeah. Well, the whole world has a need to know. And there are members of Congress that do know. There's always been members of Congress that knew there was an ET presence. That doesn't mean they're going to say anything. But in order for them to take formal action, which is required to get the disclosure, they got to have more than just, yeah, I know, I read some of the classics, right, in the literature. I read Stanton Friedman. I listened to Bryce Zabel and his podcast, whatever. No, they need to talk to witnesses. And they need to get other briefings. And so that went on for a substantial length of time. Totally appropriate. All right, fine, good, fine. Then what? Well, why do you take briefings like that? Why do you do hearings? Congress does this to gather information so that it can decide about two things in particular: legislation and oversight. All right. And so in order to do legislation, you got to have information. You got to know sources are. You've got to be able to get clear, accurate, and hopefully firsthand information. And then you get together with other members of your caucus or your committee, and you start to decide what to do. And ultimately, if the information is important enough and the issue is important enough, you start some legislation. Well, guess what? After about 2 years of all this behind-the-scenes briefing, which I'm going to give Christopher Bellin the most credit, maybe I'm missing somebody, feel free to email me, they started legislation. Now, in this case, the first person to make the move, not the first member of Congress to engage the issue. There were others, but early. And, well, there's a Chinese curse called don't be ahead of your time. They had a rough time, but not this time. Marco Rubio makes the first move. And he puts legislation in the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act, which, of course, was passed in 2020 as part of the COVID omnibus bill, setting up or fully establishing the UAP task force and some other stuff, and asking for a report from the DOD, both public and private and all that. Big deal, big deal. That legislation was passed. They got a classified report in June. The public got a 7-8 page report in June as well. Generated a lot of media. All good. All right. Then they passed more legislation the next time. 2021, they passed more. This was championed by Kirsten Gillibrand in this case. Put more language in, language that was designed to help witnesses, not say whistleblower, witnesses, help to increase the flow of information, to lower the bar for people to come forward, and so forth and so forth. People can go and read this legislation. I assure you it's easy to find. And then another year goes by and another act is passed. And this one is, again, coming out of the Senate Intel Committee. This is not surprising. That is the committee that should appropriately be dealing with this and will be dealing with it. Committees have priorities, and they have gravitas, and they have status and protocol. Intel Senate about as big as it gets. Mark Warner stepped in, the chairman, right? And he put substantial language into the 2023 bill that was obviously passed in 2022, which then brings us to 2023. There is a new NDAA being put together, and that language is being formed. The Senate has its version. The House has its version. But then something very profound happened. Major David Grusch came forward as a whistleblower.
And he's who I want to ask my first question to you about.
Sure. So you see what I'm saying? This process is underway, and it is leading to disclosure, and that was the intent. Yeah, all along. Not find out what it is in the truth embargo.
Yeah. So what are your feelings about David Grusch, the UAP/crash retrieval whistleblower? Do you agree that he's a whistleblower, considering everything he says publicly has to be approved by the Pentagon? Or do you feel that he's a distraction from the Russo-Ukraine conflict and the inevitable coming war with China, whose economy is teetering on collapse?
Let me be frank. David Grusch is an American hero. David Grusch is absolutely legitimate. And he is, to my knowledge, the only current known whistleblower. He is a whistleblower. All of the other individuals you're hearing from, as far as I know, unless I hear differently, are witnesses. And there
David Fravor, yeah.
Absolutely. They're witnesses. They're not whistleblowers. You do not want to be a whistleblower unless that's what you want, right? In other words, a whistleblower, you can only be a whistleblower if you decide to be, all right? Witnesses, on the other hand, can be witnesses, and they can decide to speak or not speak or what have you. They can be called to testify and give information, but that doesn't make them a whistleblower. A whistleblower is a hard road to travel.
Yeah.
And so you do not want to put anybody on that road unless that's exactly what they want. Now, we know about whistleblowers. There have been many famous ones.
Sure.
None of them had a good time. All right. Period. All right. And so but he is a whistleblower. And the reason he is because, one, he says he is. Two, he has been harassed, right? And pressure has been put on him to not speak. And three, he believes that the actions of the government related to the issue he's talking about are illegal. Okay? You don't come forward and blow the whistle on legal things the government's doing. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And so he is a whistleblower, and he's paying a price for it. He's an American hero. I predict he will get the Presidential Medal of Freedom one day. So that's what I think about David Grusch. He is anything but a distraction. Now, but it's also true that he is premature. You know, history is messy, and you can plan.
Pioneers are the ones with the arrows in their backs.
True, but you can also plan. People. Governments want things to go certain ways. The public wants things to go certain ways. Everybody has their plans, and for big projects, they do their best and they spreadsheet it and everything else. But then once things get underway, all those spreadsheets go out the window. And so the issue with Grusch, in terms of the disclosure process, is he came out early. In other words, as I said before, from the beginning, when the To the Stars Academy came out, the goal was to get disclosure. I think initially under Clinton, very early in her administration, 2017. Then it had to be to get disclosure later. Exactly when, not sure, but to get disclosure. To create the situation where the president could step forward and confirm the ET presence. This is what we've always wanted. But in order to do that, you have to depoliticize it. You got to involve the agencies and the DOD. You need to involve the Congress. You need to involve a lot of people. You need to show the people that you're doing the right thing. And they are doing that, all right? And it needs to stay within the lines. Here's the analogy. You're standing on the goal line. Kickoff comes to you. Yeah, boom. Your goal is to run that ball up and get a touchdown, win the game. Okay, and off you go, right? And then people are trying to knock you down. So you go here, you go there, whatever. You're moving up, jugging. And if you're lucky and you can avoid all of the issues and the problems and the people trying to knock your block off, you score a touchdown. But guess what? Anytime in that run, if your foot just steps an inch out of bounds, the play is over.
Right.
And that is what we've been dealing with all along. In order to score a touchdown, which is disclosure, they had to stay on the field. They had to stay in bounds. There were so many things they couldn't say, couldn't do, couldn't go. And it's awkward, all right? But they had no other choice. And why is it awkward? Well, it's awkward because the reality of this thing and the information about it is not hidden. It's well known. There's been 3 decades, quarter century of research, untold amounts of research, educating people all over the world about this phenomena. We know a lot about it. The public knows a lot about it. And so essentially it's a known thing that the government says, no, it's not there, when huge numbers of people every year, more people know it is there. And so, how do you go about telling people finally, oh yeah, there's something there, when you've been saying it's not there for 77 years and you knew it was? How do you do this? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't do it right, the public relations hits are going to be monstrous. You're going to get barbecued. You're going to get cut up like Benihana shrimp, all right? And so, and people's reputations and legacies are going to get hurt. There's going to be more disruption. It's going to undermine more trust in government. It could be politicized, blah, blah, blah. And so how do you do it so you can make it the best possible disclosure that we could have? Well, exactly as I was saying. But the fundamental dilemma they had was this. they have got to move forward under a false premise, or a script that a lot of people would not realize is a false script. Certainly a lot of millennials, new people, younger people, they wouldn't care if they knew, but plenty of people would know. They had to move forward, follow that script, even though a lot of people would know, that's not real. That is put up. And so they have to act as if, wow, we had no idea. You mean there's stuff up there we didn't know? Oh, and then they have to do it in a context that's politically safe. Safe for the Congress, safe for journalists, meaning national security, of course. Not, we need to move forward on this because we can form a galactic federation and we can live like Roddenberry had the Star Trek people. No, it's got to be politically safe. That's national security. And that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. There is a theoretical potential national security matter here without question. So it's a political safe path. They got to do that. They have to act as if we didn't know, right? And they cannot answer questions that take them into classified NDAs. Can't go there. So you have to say, I can't respond to that, or even just outright lie. It's not easy. And the less time it would take would be the better. They don't want this to stretch out. And the plan was not for it to stretch out. Mm-hmm. But the election went a different way. And then a pandemic showed up and a war in Ukraine showed up and all this other stuff showed up. And so it just has dragged it out, making it a brutal, and look, let me tell you, if you look at the major activist movements of the 20th century, they were all brutal. And so we shouldn't complain too much because there were much more brutal activist movements than this, but it made it a lot harder. And so they're trying to get this thing done. And they're trying to get to what? Disclosure. And the way is fairly straightforward. Put a simple way, they need to do everything they should have done and could have done in 1948, but they chose not to. They could have done it in 1964 after the Cuban Missile Crisis. They chose not to. They could have done it in 1953 after the mass sightings over Washington, D.C. that everybody saw, but they chose not to. They could have done it when the Cold War ended, 1992-93. Clinton was approached by Rockefeller at that time. He knew it was time to get it done. He tried to get Clinton to force majeure the process. Go get the files. That wasn't going to work, but still they tried. Didn't happen. And then the 30 years go by, and now it's going to happen. All right. And so the right way is educate the Congress, get cooperation from the DOD, set up committees, set up programs, set up research, set up this, set up that, tracking all that stuff, do all those things, and then hold hearings. Now, there's nothing unusual about holding hearings, but there's a good and a bad here. The bad is this. When they do hold the hearings, and there's already been one, and it's a small one, it's okay. There's much more significant hearings coming, one in particular. When they hold those hearings, and we've already seen some of that, what people are going to be learning is what I just told you. The government has known all along, all right? And so people go, whoa. And so that's going to create a little cognitive dissonance. All right, that's all right. You still have to hold these hearings. And so, but what is important about the hearings is that unlike reading like Richard Dolan's books or listening to a nice podcast, you're seeing former military people under oath who have established known careers giving testimony to all of this on television before many millions of people to the United States Congress. That's gravitas. That is what just stamps it, right? In stamps it, brands the history with it. That's big time. And so you don't have to do that very long. When the president, who is stepping out of this, keeping out of this deliberately, I assure you, the president doesn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. The president can say this simple thing. I've watched the testimony, as you have. I've talked to my aides. I've talked to the people at the Pentagon. I've talked to the Gang of Eight, who also obviously watched it. And we have concluded that this testimony does confirm non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial presence, whatever the hell he wants to say. Disclosure, boom. Not political, not at all. So no political, no partisanship. The president has not damaged politically anybody, including himself, though he does get a tremendous legacy. The Congress will be seen as done the right thing. The DOD did the right thing. They cooperated, so forth and so forth. And people go, you did the right thing. Now, it was a bit of show, right? But still, thank you. Thank you for at least doing what you should have done. And that is a public relations driven extrication project. That's what this has been all along. But it is tough. As it drags out, people keep scratching their head and going, what? Okay, so with that in mind, and when you read this article, those who read that article in the Liberation Times and just got to see all the things that have happened, right? Some people are interpreting that one way, is like, the DOD is pushing back, the CIA is taking over, they're going to stop the whole thing. It's all a ruse, it's a distraction, it's this, that, and whatever else, and they're not cooperating, and it's awful, and they're just being the same assholes they've always been. No, that's not what I see at all. You get this thing going, right? And it's not like all the top people in the Pentagon got together with all the top people in the Congress, maybe some White House aides and some journalists on the side, and all got together in a skiff, maybe 100, 200 people, and worked the whole thing out on a spreadsheet. No. They're all having to play a role in a play without a rehearsal. They're not, it's not that or coordinated. I mean, they sort of both, everybody kind of knows, the White House, the Congress, the DOD, where they need to end up. But the process of getting there is going to have to sort of be worked out on the way, like running that touchdown. You just don't run straight up the field. You got to dodge all the tackles and everything else, right? If you're going to score. And so it's going to be messy and it's unpredictable. But overall, it was moving forward pretty well. 3 excellent tranches of legislation, tons of press, statements from members of Congress, and all of that is moving forward very nicely. All right. Witnesses were coming forward. You were hearing about them. The issue of contact was not put into play, virtually not touched, because that's not now.
It's a hot potato.
That's the equivalent of leaving the field to check out somebody in the stand and have a chat with somebody up in the stand. No. You're off the field. It's over. That's for later. That's for post-disclosure. So they're pretty much moving along, but it's going too slow. There's no question it's going too slow. I knew that. I knew that the longer it took to get this done, the more likely something unusual would happen. And it did. David Grusch, because of threats and intimidation that still didn't stop after he went to the intelligence community IG, Inspector General, continued. David Grusch, who also talked to the committee chairs and given all the information about the the unacknowledged special access, ET tech programs and the bodies, the whole 9 yards. There's probably a lot of people on the Hill right now know all about that. But again, it's not for public consumption. After he had done all that and Arrow wasn't taking any action and the threats continued, he has a family, he has a wife. He said, enough is enough. I'm going to be a whistleblower. He gets 2 journalists, Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal, to represent him. Somebody set him up with Ross Coulthart. They chose News Nation, which is a fast-growing new network, right?
With no baggage.
With no baggage. It's going to try to be Fox News light, meaning it's going to try to be conservative, but simply
even Fox News has been pretty integral to the process.
No, and that's a good test of the issue. Fox News has been able to tackle this issue big time. It is one of the top 3 coverages for this year. I think it's 54 articles, because it is nonpartisan. And when something is nonpartisan, Fox News will engage it, and they've done a good job. But News Nation is not Fox News. They chose them. Good move. And so on the same day, the debrief, the Post and the New York Times, for various reasons, none of which were necessarily, wrong, decided we can't jump with this. We don't have enough. We don't need more information. We need to vet. We need whatever they need to do. It's a whistleblower issue. There's all kinds of legal implications for the paper. They chose not to. The debrief didn't have those problems. So the debrief gets the glory. Might get a Pulitzer Prize. And they pop the Grusch story, and it drops on. All of it drops.
I know that'd make Micah very happy.
Well, I think it'll be the debrief in total. We'll get it.
Yeah.
So they dropped the bomb on June the 5th. Well, this is the black swan. This is what I knew could happen if they didn't get this done. And so what happened is that he is now dropped into a relatively orderly process that was leading towards the hearings right, that we need. I mean, the big ass hearings, the ones in front of the Senate Intel Committee. And he drops right into that in a way that you simply can't dismiss. We have that tech. We've had that tech. We've got bodies, which of course confirms
me if I'm wrong, Steve, but wasn't there language in the NDAA that said that people had 1 year from the drafting of that legislation or once it took hold to use whistleblower status, to either use it or lose it?
No, I don't think so. I don't recall language like, whistleblower status. You can't put a timeline on it. There's already a whistleblower act. There's a couple. They don't actually need another whistleblower act, but what they've been doing. It
seems like I remember something about a 1 year deadline.
Which legislation are you referring to? The 3 that have been passed, or the one that's under development?
No, it's been passed. It's why he came out, was my understanding.
No, that's mistaken. I'm going to say no to that.
Okay.
This really was a problem, huge problem, because again, they're not. The script doesn't call for that. Right. The third act, the final act hasn't started, right? And now it's like somebody is starting to. It's like you're having a play with 3 acts, and somebody starts speaking dialogue that's actually from the third act, right, in the second act, and the actors are sitting around going, what? So, boy, he just hung a big matzo ball right out there. What do you do? I mean, what do you do? Well, look, I'll tell you what happened. First of all, a lot of entities just said nothing. I mean, they're just going, what do we know? Nothing, right? But of course, the press was not going to let that go. And so, okay, so that has happened. It can't be undone. And so then the question is, what is going to be the effect of it? Where is it going to take us? And what will that direction have to say or do about the disclosure process in general? Well, here's what it did. Here's what it triggered. Totally expected, not unreasonable at all. As I mentioned, the legislative process, which has been underway for a long time, primarily private meetings, both in the House and Senate, but only in certain committees, was ultimately launched by the Senate Intel Committee through members of the Senate Intel Committee. And there was Rubio, Warner, Gillibrand, all members of the Senate Intel Committee that were driving that legislation. All right. And then, let's don't forget this, 9 days after Grusch announces, we've got bodies in tech, Senator Schumer, who is the majority leader of the Senate, though not a member, though I think maybe technically he could be a member of any committee he wants to be, but he is not a standard member of the Intel Committee. He drops another bombshell 10 days after Grusch. Did he plan to do it later but had to do it sooner? Did he know about Grusch ahead of time? A lot of people knew about Grusch. They may not have known when he was going to go public, but they sure knew he could. 9 days afterward, Schumer gives an announcement that he is specifically putting language in the next NDA bill, National Defense Authorization Act, which will be signed later this year, that basically says, and I'm paraphrasing, hey, y'all, all you civilians out there, public corporations and stuff, defense contractors, things like that, if you should happen to have any of that non-human tech, it belongs to the United States. Don't you forget. Okay. And by the way, in 300 days from the signing of the act, something like that, we want an accounting of all that non-human tech and bodies you have. Just give us a report on that. And basically, if we want it back, you're going to give it back.
Maybe that's where I concocted the 1 year.
300 days. 300, and that's a meaningless thing. I mean, the 300 days, forget about it. What Schumer just did, what he did, and again, it's from the Senate, right? This is 9 days. This is 9 days after. This is June the 14th. Is he just sent a message to the entire Senate and certainly the Senate Intel Committee and the Armed Forces? Hey, I'm the leader of the Senate, and I'm down with all this. I'm good. I like what you're doing. Like that legislation. Fine. Looks fine for me. Soldier on. Wow. But he's also sending a message to the entire government. He's sending it to the DOD. He's sending it to the White House. He's sending it to the House. He's sending it to everybody in the military intelligence complex, even the ones that are working 50 stories down underneath some base somewhere, is that I'm the Senate majority leader. And I'm down with this whole process. Meaning, folks, just go with it. All right. Let's just get this done. All right.
Move it along.
That was a big deal. Yeah. And then, okay, fine. So his hand might have been forced on that. Right. He might not have come up with that language if Grusch doesn't emerge. But now you've got this heavily Senate grounded process underway. And the House is just sitting there steaming. Right. I mean, they've done a little bit. Andre Carson, he was a Dem in the House. He held a subcommittee hearing. That was the one Moultrie and Bray. And Gallego, nice Democrat in the House. He did a little. He worked on some language, right? But overall, that's about it. And the Republicans hadn't done much at all until Tim Burchett goes out. Tim Burchett decides enough, right? It's time for the Republicans to get rocking on this. We're not going to be left behind. And so he goes out on his own. And he goes out intense. All right. Now, he was already out there before Grusch comes forward. But because he was already out there, it made it a lot easier for him to convince Comer, I think, hey, we want on this train. We're not potted plants sitting down here in the House. And the Oversight Committee is a pretty damn important committee. And the Oversight Subcommittee on, I think it's Defense, the Border, Foreign Affairs, is an important committee. And so we should have a hearing. And I can put it together for you fast. And he did. In a very short order, they were able to pull together a hearing. And the key, which is not easy to do. It's not like, oh, let's just have a hearing tomorrow. Oh, no. Let's go get the witnesses. Well, the witnesses can tell you to go pound sand. I'm not coming to you. I don't want to be in front of that hearing. I don't want to talk to you. And then they could subpoena them, but that would take forever. And of course, it would be a politically very bad idea. But nevertheless, they gave it a shot and they got it. Why? Because Grusch was more than happy to testify. He's coming forward because he's being harassed. And he's not going to wait for the Senate Intel Committee to finally make their move if there's a committee ready to do it right now. And so he said, sure. And the moment I think they had him, they had Graves and Fravor. That's their hearing. They're gold. They threw that together pretty quickly. Burchett and Paula Luna was did the hard work, and they were able to get a hearing done on July the 26th, which Grusch is now saying the same things he was saying on Ross Coulthard on his station, but now he's saying them under oath before Congress. So now, again, it's driving.
If you were lying, that would be perjury and contempt of Congress.
All right. So to get back to where I was. So as this thing goes forward, the DOD has got to respond. And so there's back and forth going on between the Congress and the DOD. It wasn't that the DOD is going to say, well, the jig's up, right? Send some people over to the Intel Committee, say, what do you want? We'll set up an entire office. We'll do this. We'll do that. And we want $40 million, blah, blah, blah. No. The DOD was going to cooperate, but it wasn't just going to roll over because the DOD, the Air Force, the services, particularly the Air Force, they have really serious public relations issues you're going to have to deal with, and they'd rather not. And some of them, and there's plenty of people in the military intelligence complex that still think that disclosing is against our national interest. They don't want to do it, right? It's wrong. Sure. It's dangerous, whatever. So now it's just going to roll over, and so they're gonna work with it, but they're not. They're gonna kind of try to slow it down or whatever. And
do you think that they're going to try and make it compulsory for these agencies to disclose?
Yeah. Well, there are some force majeures that could be pulled, but again, that's not in the interest of a public relations process. Mm-hmm. See, the public relations extrication project here is to try to have as most winners as possible, as few losers, minimal damage, less disruption, and let's all come out of this as friends. In the post-disclosure world, we'll all sit down, have some champagne together. The past is a bucket of ashes, as Ogden Nash once said, the poet. And let's just move on, right? So that's what they want. So you don't want to go there. But all of the changes and the UAP task force, and they set up, another group, and they stuck it over the DIA, and everything you're reading in that article is to some degree a slowdown, some degree not trying to get pushed too fast, and also some actual pushback, right? Some people that are deliberately trying to kind of slow it down. But could they end it? No. And they knew that. Could they really sabotage it? No. But they could slow it down. And again, to the extent that this process is starting to get off script, what happens when an actor in a play goes off script and just starts ad-libbing? All the other actors have got to respond to that, and they start saying stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. And so the play can get pretty crazy. It might work out, might not. And so Grusch has forced a lot of people off script. And a perfect example of that is that because he got ahead and raised the issue of bodies in tech, which has all kinds of clearly national security implications, particularly if it hasn't been fully acknowledged and the DOD has not had a proper time to prepare. General Miley pushes back hard. I get it. He's a national defense guy, and he sees that this is getting a little out of hand, off script, whatever. Sean Kirkpatrick pushes back. I don't blame him. Kirkpatrick is in a terrible position. Okay. In other words, he is the head of ARROW, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office.
And why is he so reticent to say anything?
Well, because he can't. In other words, basically, he is the head of the office that ultimately is the office at the Pentagon that's going to deal with this issue. But it's not going to be dealing with the issue by finding it out. It already knows what it is. It is a Potemkin village set up for a purpose, like one of those false towns that they set up in a Western to serve a purpose. And he's the mayor of that town. Right? So he doesn't want to be answering. He doesn't want to answer any difficult questions. And also, not surprisingly, there wasn't a lot of eagerness to throw a lot of money at ARROW, and Gillibrand noticed that, and she got upset about it. But it's like a Potemkin village. It's you don't need to spend money on it. You just set it up. You don't have to run it. Now, I'm not trying to be critical here. I'm not trying to even be. I'm not trying to be too sly. But I'm just simply saying that's what it is. It is set up because it needs to be set up. As part of this process that shows the people we're doing the right thing. But Grusch has put Kirkpatrick in a terrible position. So anybody comes to him and says, well Dr. Kirkpatrick, what do you think about alien bodies in USAP programs buried in some underground facility? What is he going to say? Well, I can't really talk about that, which means, yeah, I know all about it. It's an impossible position for him. I mean, if I were him, I'd have suddenly just taken a vacation and just said, look, I have a family problem, and I'm going to have to spend about a month, maybe two, dealing with a terrible family problem. My assistant, who is not available, he's in an impossible position. He made the decision to punch back hard against Grusch to try to minimize him so people would be less likely to come to him, Kirkpatrick. It was a mistake, but I don't know what else he could have done. I think he could have handled it better. How that's going to work out, I don't know. But in any event, all of this seems, in other words, the play is starting, the second act, the final part of the second act of the play has kind of gone off script, and the audience is getting restless. They're getting unhappy. There's some boos. I get it. Am I blaming Grusch? No. He wouldn't have had to come out if it wasn't for the damn threats. I blame the people that were threatening him. And these were people maybe that said, we got to threaten this guy, shut him up.
And that brings me to the first question that we have from the chat. As you know, in the second hour, we take questions from the chat. Right. And Why Yutan asks a question for Stephen Bassett. Then why is the Congressional Committee encountering so much resistance from the Pentagon? Do you believe there's a civil war going on in the Pentagon over this?
No, not at all. See, one of the I'd sort of gotten to that one more point. Again, talking about the results of Grusch coming forward too soon and screwing up the script. It opened the door for the House to make a move, and so the House is going, "Hey, we're going to get into this." Right? We're not letting the Senate have all the glory, the Senate intel have all the glory. And so they threw that hearing together. And they hold that hearing. And that created problems. You see, the hearing is supposed to be in front of the Senate intel, not a subcommittee of the Oversight Committee in the House. By the way, the House is far more politicized than the Senate. And the Senate's politicized. And so it really...
Insofar as being partisan, you mean?
Partisan, absolutely, and also outspoken, right? In other words, a lot of the partisanship is very, very verbal, very obvious. The House is it's a raunchier side of town. And so the heavy-duty inside guys did not want the House getting into this, other than like it had, limited, not too much. They were expecting the Senate intel to hold the major hearing because there's plenty of very powerful witnesses that could blow this issue up finally once and for all. And it would be in a setting with a huge audience. But the House moves ahead. And so they weren't happy about it. And they got aggressive. Okay. In other words, I'm not being too critical here. I don't take this as partisan or too critical. But fact is that the Senate engagement of this issue has been pretty appropriate, and has had virtually no grandstanding at all. This whole House movement was loaded with grandstanding, plenty of it, and the guys inside, I'm sure, did not like that. They didn't want the House dealing with this at this point. Eventually, there'll be committees in both houses holding hearings for months and months and months once the president ends this embargo. But they didn't want to deal. So they didn't want to cooperate. So Gates and Luna, they got even more aggressive. They wanted to follow up on Grusch's testimony, and they wanted information. And they went to a base down in Florida. They arranged to go down there. The base said, "Okay, we'll tell you this or tell you that." They went down, and then the base changed the script when they got down there. That made them mad, and they sort of they went and they were upset about that, and they went public with that. And then they had trouble getting a skiff, right? Because if you get a skiff, that means you can hear the absolute most classified stuff. And one way to kind of minimize how much classified stuff they got is deny them a skiff. There might have been not enough time, who knows? And every little thing they're going right to the press, okay? And so there's not a civil war going on in the Pentagon. What there is an effort by the Pentagon to follow a script, to follow a process, hopefully as quickly as possible, that will get to the point where the president can confirm the ET presence and we can leave the embargo behind and start all acting like adults and start giving out information and regaining the public's trust. And so this is a bump along the way. There's one solution, right? And I have visited his office and I've left some cards and I talked to some of the staff, but the man of the hour is Mark Warner, without question. He is the chairman of the Senate Intel Committee. He is the only one that can call a hearing before the Senate Intel Committee. Even the president can't do that. Maybe the Senate Majority Leader can, I don't know, but I'm thinking it's just the chair. And so they've interviewed some witnesses, though. Apparently, some of those were on the phone. They didn't fly them in. Of course, it costs a lot of money to fly them in, but they knew who they are. I mean, all the work done by all our colleagues and a lot of people watching your podcast right now, all the work has been done. They know the witnesses to go to, and they probably know some others that are even better, and they know who they are. In fact, it's now been out. We know that a number of people inside government, possibly in the Congress Intel Committee, have talked to the insiders that gave Grusch the secondhand information about the bodies in the machines. They've talked to the original people that are working on the bodies and have the bodies and working on the machines. Imagine these people sitting down under oath with 100 million people watching and testifying to that firsthand. They have that. And so the simple truth is this, and the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses, there's probably 5, 6, 7 of those. Mark Warner has the power to call a hearing early in September, anytime. He could announce the date tomorrow, right? And say, we're going to start hearing on this. We're going to hold it over a period of 3 to 5 days. We expect anywhere from 10 to 15 witnesses. They're going to be addressing various aspects of this phenomena at a very high level. He can do that anytime. And when do you
anticipate that he will?
I know that he should. I know the reasons why it's the right thing to do. And maybe I'm going to be up on the Hill, next week walking around, and I'm going to be making some calls. I don't know. There's some certain colleagues of mine that are all over the friggin' Hill. They practically live there. I have not been there. I've been in LA working on a media deal, which will land soon. But I'm back, and I'm hoping that maybe they'll sit down with me and chat a little bit, because I am an activist and I have a particular perspective on this, a little different than almost anyone I know, but there may be others. But I'd say the odds are definitely above 50% that he is going to call this hearing in September. And if he does, it's over. It's that simple. If the witnesses, the high quality military witnesses that we know are ready to testify, willing to testify, or maybe a few USAP people that would prefer not to testify, but they won't need to be subpoenaed, sit down over a period of 3 or 4 days, maybe 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, for 3, 4, 5 days. By the end of that week, it's over. It is done. The truth embargo is completely baked. Mm-hmm. That cake is baked and now can be taken out of the oven. I was quoted on this in Newsweek magazine. She botched the quote. It was supposed to say the cake has been baked. It just needs to be taken out of the oven. Whatever. The point is, it's over. And the president, virtually at the end of that week, remember, they start the hearings on Monday. By Friday evening, about 7 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock Eastern time, 9, the president will be easily able to come out in the East room of the White House, behind that podium you've seen many times, to a whole bunch of media, and simply say this: that the testimony is compelling. All of my top people have seen it. I've discussed it with the Pentagon. I've discussed it with the congressional leaders, the Gang of Eight. They've seen it. It's non-human tech. We're not alone, or however he wants to put it, right? And that's disclosure. Boom. Yeah. Done. Yeah. Friday evening. That's what we're headed. And we've got to get there, because if we don't get there as quickly as possible, this thing can get even messier. I mean, it could become a mess. And that's just going to damage the government. It's going to damage certain people's careers.
The whole process, really.
It's just going to be, it's like, hey, you get it done. It's like you go in for an operation, right? It's like, you got to have an open heart surgery. Okay. Yeah. And it needs to take about 2 hours. But for whatever reason, the doctors, got some other things going on. He's watching a baseball game, whatever the hell. The nurses are late, and the damn thing gets into 6 hours. You're going to die. Right? So you got to get things done sometimes. This is something that has got to get done as soon as possible. The campaign has started. Okay. And let me tell you, if we don't get disclosure soon, it's going to be a fiasco. Case in point. In a very lively 2-hour debate last night, at the very end, came the one UFO question to just one of the members. It happened to be Chris Christie. I'm sure every other person on that stage went, "Oh, thank God I did not get that question." And Christie basically, what could he do? He just acted like an idiot and botched it. And that will come back to haunt him. But if we had disclosure, that question would have been irrelevant. It wouldn't have been asked that question. Right. Everybody would have been asked. So you're going to see more of that. You're going to see these put in this position where they just make fools of themselves on this issue. And the issue is truth embargo has already made fools of everybody, right? And it will continue to make fools of everybody as we go forward. So my message to Mark Warder: Mark, give me a call. I'm on the web. Happy to come in. My office is only 12 blocks.
And he was one of the ones that got your 3 DVD set, right?
Sure. His office got the full set of the citizen hearing on disclosure. He was in the Senate at that time. I'm sure that there's people on his staff that know about it. They may not be connecting it to me now, but I'm going to work on that.
But they will.
I'm about to go full lobbyist. I mean, I most of my time, 26 years.
You never want to go full lobbyist, Stephen.
Well, I don't mean it in that way. Yeah, full lobbyist. For most of the last 25 years, you going up on the Hill and wandering around trying to talk to people or whatever, trying to get meetings was just hopeless. They just couldn't do it. They couldn't engage it. It's one thing for a political, private political activist trying to get the ear of somebody in the Hill, as opposed to Christopher Mellon with his career trying to bring a witness up there. And so it was just pointless. And so, and if you could be persistent. In other words, we're gonna get their ear by driving them crazy, and then you become a joke. and you piss everybody off. And so I worked elsewhere. My activism was elsewhere. But now I can be the lobbyist that I intended to be.
Always meant to be.
Always meant to be. So I'm going to be up on the Hill and see if I can get my perspective into some offices, particularly the Democrats who have been kind of sitting on the sidelines for a lot of this, not all of it, and maybe help a little bit. But that's my call. Warner's got to call it for September, because we don't want any more moments like last night, where the UFO question is botched completely by somebody who is a relatively intelligent person.
In regard to that, Jabbar from the chat wants to know the status of the News Nation interview, criminal law implication of abductions after disclosure, and where do you see this thing by the end of September in regards to the truth embargo?
Well, I'll start with the last one. If the hearings are held in September, the disclosure will happen in September. Secondly, there's legal implications to a lot of stuff. America is a place where people just sue each other just for sport. So the potential legal lawsuits and so forth is bottomless. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about that post-disclosure. I'm going to be on the side of as few as possible. I think there may be a couple of areas where some legal action, some accommodations, and I'm talking about people getting made whole. There could be some of that, but suing over every little aspect of it ain't going to help. The government's done a lot of things. I mean, we could file 100 lawsuits tomorrow about Vietnam War or even the Iraq War. Pick one, doesn't matter. We could go on and on and on, and maybe there are some. But the point is that on this issue is so important, so transcendent. It's not like a war. It is something unlike anything else ever. And we're going to be in a new world after the moment disclosure takes place. We enter a whole new world I call the post-disclosure world, the paradigm shift, unprecedented in human history. And we need to focus on the future and what we can do and how we can change things in that world, as opposed to suing over everything over the last 75 years. I expect there will be amnesty legislation that will be passed. There might even be truth and reconciliation legislation. I support both. People say, what's the difference? Amnesty simply means that in the information gathering and revealing process post-disclosure, if you kind of screw up and violated an NDA or something,
no retaliation, retribution.
You're okay. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just go whole hog wild, right? And just, and steal, 100 boxes of files from the CIA and take them to the New York Times. It just means that you're protected in terms of trying to properly deal with this. And if a mistake happens, it's okay. Truth and reconciliation is another matter. We might need it. I would hope we wouldn't, but we might. Truth and reconciliation is powerful. It means that if you were running a program that related to this issue, either you're running it still or you did run it, that just absolutely violates quite a few laws. And in the civilian world, if you did that in the civilian world, you go to jail for 20, 30, 40 years. If you come forward to a truth and reconciliation panel, whatever set up, and you give all the information about it, everything that you know, everything that you did, explain it in thorough detail so that we have the record and we know, there will be no recriminations for you. Right. Truth and reconciliation. If they can do it in South Africa, where the stuff that was done was beyond the pale, we can certainly do it in this, which is not to that degree at all. We might need it, might not, but those two things will help to move us forward post-disclosure, and I'll hope to be servicing that idea.
Another question from the chat. Wayutan asks, question for Stephen Bassett. When do you think, what do you think happens after disclosure? What comes next?
Immediately, the media will go into media frenzy mode, which is why if I'm the president, I do it Friday night and then lock the White House up, Go up in the bedroom, don't leave, and give the public 2 days to kind of reflect. Give the journalists 2 days to form their questions, and then on Monday, they're all going to head on down to the White House briefing room, the briefing room of the DoD, the congressional briefing room, NASA, and anything else that's got a briefing room, depending upon their area of interest and their questions. And they're going to be packed, and they're going to have a ton of questions. Okay. And that starts right away. Now, they could deliberately hold off on that. Probably not a good idea, but it's not as if there's going to be limitations. They're going to answer a lot of questions. It's going to be awkward. And this is where the public relations benefits of the whole process we've seen will start kicking in. And I'll get back to this, but that'll happen. And then if they're smart, at least a half a dozen committees should immediately indicate that they intend to hold a hearing on this aspect of the ET history, this aspect of the phenomenon, this is so, and kind of spread it out and begin the witness collection process. And let people know.
I just need to interrupt you
Sure.
very briefly to let folks know we are giving away 3 DVDs from the UFO 3rd annual mega conference in Laughlin, Nevada. This one is the Incredible Disclosures panel with Sid Goldberg, Richard Dolan, Richard Doty, and Daniel Sheehan. This one is just the Richard Dolan lecture, and of course the Paul Stonehill lecture, and he's the guy that brought over a lot of the Soviet UFO file secrets. So there is a URL on the screen. You follow that URL, you type in your name gets put on the wheel. At the end of the show, we'll go ahead and spin that wheel, and we'll have 3 lucky winners. Back to you, Stephen.
Good. They will announce that they're going to hold these hearings. Now, a bunch of them, and they will take time. But they'll say, "Look, we're going to hold these hearings." And one of the reasons I want, and I'll say there, we hope to start in whatever. Say this happens in September. They may say, like, end of October, we're going to do something in November, whatever. But these hearings are going to start happening, and we're covering these areas, multiple committees. And they'll, if possible, give some dates. Now, one of the benefits of doing that is that as they face off to the press, which is going to be in a rather intense frame of mind, they have one more back door. Because here's the way things are going to have to go post-disclosure. Unless there's still people up on the Hill that are out of their friggin' minds. There's only 2 answers, and there might be 3. Okay, I'm going to add. I've always said 2. I'm going to go with 3. There's only 3 answers to every question. Only 3. That's it. Here they are. Anything else will be a big, big mistake. Okay. One is the absolute truth. Yeah. Here's your question. Boom. Here's the truth. Here's the answer. And it's the truth. And it holds up. No problem. Second answer. I understand that you want to know about that. At this point, it's still classified. So we cannot go there yet. We are reviewing the whole area of what can be declassified and when and so forth. And so if it becomes possible to declassify that, I can answer that question at a future time. And the third possibility will be we intend to address that in the hearing that we scheduled, find this committee or that committee as effective whatever date. And so you'll be getting information about that in that hearing from witnesses. That gives them a third out. Okay. That's the only 3 answers they had better give. If they play coy, if they act stupid, if they give an outright lie, the level of intense interest in this issue will be so vast. The entire matrix of social media and the power of the internet is going to be literally focused on them like a Death Star. And if they come out with some stupid lie, it's going to be literally shredded within hours. And they will be made to be a liar. And they'll have to replace that spokesperson with somebody else. And if that person lies, you're going to have to replace them. The public will put up with nothing but the truth, or it's classified, or we will address that in hearings. And eventually that needs to be the case for everything that happens on the Hill. We need to get in the truth business in this country. It is so much better than the professional lying business, which is not helping and screwing everybody. But whatever. So those are the only three answers. And so that will be happening. This is what I see post-disclosure pretty quickly. Now, I'll elaborate a little bit further. When people say, why the public relations extrication? I mean, what? Why not they just do it? It's all right. I'll tell you why. Just a few sample questions that will come out fast, right? They're not going to, the press is not going to go, well, okay, now, we've been lying all this time, but we don't want to push it too hard. Oh, we'll give you some time. We'll get to this later. They're going to be trying to scoop each other. They're going to be trying to get the biggest freaking stories they can get. Nothing is going to be off limits to the press. Question. Miss Press Secretary, when did the government actually know there was an ET presence? 1947, or 1945, or 42, or 38, whatever. Oh, really? Why didn't you tell us sooner? National security. Well, why did you act like you didn't know this when you were doing all the hearings and stuff? National security. Next question. When did the government actually have bodies of ETs or non-human tech or ET tech? 47, 52, whatever. Mm-hmm. Really? You had it all along? Well, why didn't you tell us? National security. Third question. Have you learned anything from that tech? Have you learned anything about physics or any technology that could be helpful to the civilian world? Answer, yes. Wow. Well, life is difficult out here. Why didn't you get that out? National security. Okay. Next question. To the DOD, maybe. This will be a DOD question. Is the Department of Defense aware that there have been hundreds of thousands of accounts, written accounts, of people who are having to deal with ETs in their home, in their bedroom? They're being taken and dealt with in various ways. Did the Department of Defense know about that? The answer, yes. Next question. Why didn't you do something about it? Answer, there was nothing we could do about it. Why didn't you tell us about it? National security. You see the public relations issues here? Just off of these, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm just getting warmed up.
Sure.
It gets worse and worse and worse. And so they will have to answer these questions. They will have to tell the truth. And the entire process underway is to just make it a little easier for us to forgive them.
I see your point.
That's what's going on.
We have another question from the chat. Mew, or MEW, asks, Stephen, do you feel disclosure is happening now because of a timeline on the part of the non-human intelligence?
Yes. But it's complicated. This is a theory I have. I should write it up in a white paper, but I have the attention span of a gnat. I love talking. I can do podcasts until the end of time, but sitting down, but maybe I will.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I have my basic underlining theory, which I'm getting better at saying in fewer words, is that everything that's happened since 47 is not just random. It's there's a purpose, there's a reason, there's a logic. It is not just, well, they're just hanging out and this has happened and that's it. I can't speak to ancient times. I don't know. Ancient times, I'm pretty sure they were around, and I'm pretty sure they were always viewed as gods. And it's very likely they kept coming back because, hey, I mean, if you're out there, you're hanging out with another species from another planet, and you're telling them, yeah, we went to Earth for about 400 years, and they just treated us like gods. It was fantastic. Anything we wanted, you should drop by, whatever. But this is not that. They're not gods. Almost nobody refers to them as gods. That ship is long sailed. We are an advanced spacefaring high-tech civilization, global. And so, and they've known that. They knew we were headed that way a long time ago. Certainly not by 1900 they knew. And so
Level 2 civilization, level 3 civilization.
Yeah, sure. But even in granular detail, physics is the same all over the universe. And so if you see a society and you're looking from above and you see it's starting to develop atomic physics and understand that, you know where they're probably going to be almost within a decade. Right. And so I think they started following us much more closely by the turn of the century, the emergence of atomic physics, relativity, and so forth. They watched us build weapons. They watched us hold two massive, unbelievably destructive wars.
And then 2,000 tests after that.
Well, again, I haven't got to that yet. And they watch us convert and figure out how to make bombs from atomic physics. They watched us plan it. They watched us build a test version. They watched us explode it. And then, of course, they were trying to see, what are you going to do next? And this was the moment. This is that turning point that I think almost guarantees the outcome that we're about to see within a relatively expected time frame. But it could have been 10 years, could have been 40, but it looks like it's going to be 8 years. Is that they watched us take two of those bombs and drop them and explode them over two cities and kill 200 and some 60,000 total, might have been more, might have been 400,000 men, women, and children, the vast majority of which were not military, incinerate them, our own species. They watched us do that. And any doubts they had of how dangerous we could be were dispelled. And all of a sudden, just almost immediately, sightings started occurring in greater numbers. The famous one, of course, Arnold, final, not Rainier, but there were other sightings all over the world. And then there's some crashes. And the famous Roswell event, of course. And then the huge event in 52 over the Capitol and so forth. So something is going on. Clearly, something has changed. So if there's a change, there's a reason for the change, which means there's an agenda. What is the agenda? All right. The fundamental agenda, I think, will prove to be this. At some point in the 20th century, they knew a few things about us, or were confirmed, or increasingly narrowed down based on their own experience. They've been around. This is not the first time they've been through this, I think. One, we're incredibly dangerous. We will kill ourselves in huge numbers. We not even think twice. Two, we are approaching the explanation for interstellar travel. In other words, the physics of interstellar travel is within our grasp. And that means we're going to build starships. I think those two things they probably calculated pretty soon. And they also knew that, and were aware, certainly, that we had built vast nuclear arsenals and set them on immediate launch mode so that we could literally have a massive destructive war at any time that would be the worst of all time, and it would be a disaster. Okay? They knew that too. But most importantly, they knew three things. We had massive weapons of destruction. We were extremely dangerous, and we were about to figure out star travel. And the moment that we built a starship, we become a danger to them, or to the other civilizations. That's the first time ever that we are a danger to anybody else outside of this planet.
Stanton Friedman used to say that on a regular basis.
Exactly. So, not surprisingly, they took action. And I'm saying that the action that they took, and we can hopefully one day we'll ask them, why this, why that, why'd you go this way, why'd you go that way? The action they took is to make their presence very known, to do lots of things that drew attention to them so that more and more people would know they were here, making it harder and harder to deny it, assuming the government chose to, which it did. They were also doing some work. They were doing work that they needed to do that's mostly the contact work. And hopefully one day we'll find out to what end and why and all that. But they were doing that work. That was kind of a side deal in a sense. And that's important. But I'm speaking to the political agenda.
Sure.
The agenda overall. And that was, okay, make themselves known, drive the process. And at some point, without being too disruptive, but before we build any starships, the human race, all 8 billion people living in 200 countries with 200 heads of states, will finally acknowledge and admit Yeah, they're here. We're not alone. There's lots of extra life in the galaxy. They're interstellar. Okay, disclosure, capital D, done. All right, fine. Okay, that's good. That's something. And what happens after that? It's common sense. What happens after that? I don't have to do.
You know what you're talking about, Steve, reminds me a great deal of Gene Roddenberry's primary directive.
Well, except of course that they violate it all the time. It is again, there isn't a prime directive, but there is their own particular way to go about things. There isn't some galactic prime directive in which there's an overall power that's going to do anything to you. Now you can do whatever the hell you want. They could blow us to kingdom come, and so what? There's probably so many planets in this galaxy nobody would notice. No, but they have their own rules. They decide how they're going to deal with this, and we have a pretty good evidence. We have a lot of evidences that their decisions. And so, at that point, what happens after disclosure? Well, it's obvious what's going to happen. The entire world is going to get busy learning everything they can about ETs. Everything that's been done, everything that's been researched, anything they can get from the government, releases, classified stuff, released, and on and on and on, and just fill up with it. They'll teach it in the universities finally, or fine university will finally go, there's actually something going on there. We should probably teach about that. And so forth. I don't want to go there. I get really worked up. The point is that it will be a massive self-teaching bonanza. And we have the technology to do it. You'll have Zoom calls with 500,000 people. And I don't know. The world will learn. It will educate itself. And after a certain amount of time, it's going to be pretty much up to speed. I mean, and it's not going to be a mystery, and it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be, hey, in which case, what becomes appropriate and possible? Full open contact. Not some clandestine contact with a particular government, which may or may not have happened. Not just grabbing somebody in the middle of the night to do a little genetics work. No, I'm talking about open, formal contact. Not necessarily walking around the UN, but they are corresponding with our leaders, and we're being told what that correspondence is about. Open contact. That's where this has all been going all along, and it has to happen soon because we're closing in on interstellar drive. And so, okay, what's the first topic of discussion? I mean, it could be anything. They could want to talk about some of our old movies they've been watching for years.
Bring back I Love Lucy.
Yeah, why can't you remake I Love Lucy? I mean, we love that show. No, it's the nukes. It's always been about the nukes.
Sure.
And so the first point of discussion with our authorities is this: it's something very simple. It's not complicated. You're going to be able to fly starships pretty soon. You've almost got the equations.
We've had the technology since the 40s.
Well, we've had the technology of antigravitics for a while. That doesn't mean we have interstellar tech. I don't know if
Friedman worked on nuclear propulsion for rockets.
Again, but that's not interstellar. And interstellar requires some kind of
warp drive. Right.
Otherwise, even with nuclear rockets, it's going to take you 10,000 years. No, they have a way to go star to star in a short amount of time. We're going to have that soon. And at that point, we are a danger to everybody out there.
Right.
Okay, everybody out there. And say, so you'll be a threat to off-planet realities. And that cannot happen. Sorry, we're not going to let that happen. We'd be a little less concerned about that if you hadn't dropped a couple of bombs on your own species, back in 45. Remember that? And of course, all the other wars and the slaughter that you've done, you're really dangerous. Okay. And so you're not leaving. You're not leaving the solar system with anything like a starship.
Total disarmament.
Call it a starship quarantine, and we'll say, oh no, we won't put the bombs on. We just let us fly. No way.
Destroy all the nukes, and then we'll talk.
Again, yeah. So if you want to build those starships and you want to leave the solar system, you're going to have to get rid of all the nukes, all of them. Okay, that's topic.
And we can help you with that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I mean,
if they can turn them off and turn them on, they can make them go away.
Yeah, well, they've got the antigravitics we could just ship all the missiles and all the nuclear waste, the billions of tons of nuclear waste, and just put it in the sun, never have to worry about it. Whatever.
Well, yeah, if they can point beams at our, missiles in the silos and turn them off, they can probably beam them out of there or whatever.
Yeah, but again, we can shut them down too. They don't have to do the work. We do the work. The point is that we have to get rid of it. They have to be gone, all of them.
Right.
And that's topic number one. And we may say, well, look, let's revisit that later. But there's so many other cool questions we want to know. They're going to say, no. That's number one. And then the debate begins. The human race is going to debate that particular issue. And you're going to have people that are going to say, you will take those nukes from my,
cold dead arms,
dead hands, and they'll go, fine. You're just not going anywhere. Forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will be a topic of discussion. A second topic, though, will be, another version of that will be, to the extent that there is a lot of resistance to this, and there will be. And some people may say, look, okay, we don't want our starships. We like our planet just the way it is. We like having our nukes. We like having mutual assured destruction. And just leave us alone. And, we won't make any starships. And if we do, blow them up. Okay, and we could do that. And they could say, you guys are really stupid, but I suppose. But then they have a second carrot. They could basically say, look, we have tech and understandings that could solve a great deal of your problems. We could be assistance to you. You got big problems. Right? You just do. I mean, it's basically your business, and we're not interested in running your planet. Maybe they did a little of that in the ancient times, but not now. 8 billion people and all the crap that's going on. Who the hell wants to run this planet? But they'll say, look, we could help you a lot. We have tech that could really solve a lot of your problems and make this planet, not only your biosphere, far more vibrant, but also lessen the suffering of all animals, including you. But you have to get rid of the nukes. We said, well, wait a minute. We said we wouldn't fly, take starships out. We said we wouldn't go out there. Why don't you just help us? I think the answer will be, why should we spend time helping a civilization that could destroy itself at any minute? That is not prepared to leave war behind. It's willing to have thousands of nukes on ready at all times, launch and just create all kinds of. Why should we do that?
So essentially, what you're saying is it's our decision.
Yeah. I mean, if you want our help, get rid of the nukes, because we're just not going to invest in a lost cause. Now that might do the trick. And in which case, we get rid of the nukes, and then we get an engagement with them, and we may see an extraordinary era of reform and repair. Unlike anything anybody could have imagined in their wildest dreams. And the message I like to leave people with is this. The only thing between us and that is little as 2 years away is the truth embargo. End the damn thing.
Yeah.
And all of that can follow pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Do you need a better reason than that?
Ari in the chat says, here, meet Gort. He'll be keeping you from leaving the star system tonight.
I like the remake of The World Stood Still. When the Day the World Stood Still, actually better than the first one.
Wow.
But the second one was more appropriate to our times. In the second one, a lot of people didn't understand the ending. They missed the ending. So he launches the nanobots. Self-replicating nanobots are launched from, quote, Gort, and heads on out to basically eat everything. Right? They're going to eat all metal. They're going to basically end society. And she persuades him to turn them off. But at the very end, he alludes to the consequence, and it's subtle. It's easy to miss it.
I must have.
All your technology is shut down. You're not going to have any tech. All of it's, you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to kind of return to hunter-gathering times. You're going to have to return to nature. You're going to have to operate without the tech. Now, that means a lot of casualties. A lot of people are going to die, but at least the whole of civilization is not going to be wiped out, because those things were going to keep replicating and eating everything in their path. That was kind of missed. That's a pretty heavy penalty to pay, but they're basically saying you people are so dangerous that unless you're willing to live like the Native Americans or the hunter-gatherers of 200,000 years ago,
back to the Stone Age,
you're just too dangerous, and that's the way it's going to be. So if I've given you that, and now I have to leave. Bye-bye. And Kino just flies off to wherever the hell. Now, I don't think the ETs have that in mind. but I like the ending to that movie. It was a much
sobering, ending.
We are a danger to everything. We will kill anything. We will kill anything, anytime, in any amount and degree. We are extremely dangerous. And we know it, and we'd like to get better, and religion is trying to reform us, and New Age religions or New Age thinking is trying to reform us, and yet we just continue to slaughter. And so there's no way, in my mind, that all that's happened in the last 76 years is not profoundly connected to that reality. Now, does that mean that we're all going to be super nice in a post-open contact, even starfaring world? No. But technically, the only thing that separates us from having a warless world and a minimally destructive world is just a slight change of worldview. I mean, really. In other words, instead of spending worldwide, the number varies, but somewhere in the range of $6 to $8 trillion a year on military and war and defense and intelligence, we spend that money on getting people food, clothing, and shelter, and purifying water, and cleaning up the oceans.
On top of all of that, we could still go to the moon and have a base there. Mars.
Of course, with the kind of tech that with anti-gravitic tech alone. But if you watch the absolute fabulous series, and I just talked to Thomas Jane the other day, and I said, Thomas, are they going to do that one last season of Expanse? You know, there's 18 threads hanging out there. We love it. And he said, the pandemic screwed everything up. It could happen, but watch the Expanse, because basically the Expanse is about a different scenario in which we don't have interstellar travel, but we develop extremely effective non-interstellar travel, and we can literally
solar system travel,
colonize the solar system. And you know what we do? We turn the solar system into another version of the Earth.
Right.
And make the solar system equally screwed up. And I'm going, I love it. Oh God, that was good. But yeah, we can't do that. It's like.
By the way, I wanted to ask you: have you seen For All Mankind on Apple Plus?
Is it a new series?
It's been around for 4 seasons, and I think the 5th season's coming out this year.
I have not.
It's an alternate history of the space race where the Soviets beat us, landing on the moon, and it's very engaging. It's one of Ronald D. Moore's projects.
Okay.
He brought back Battlestar Galactica, and was a writer on Star Trek, the various franchises. Yeah. It's very, very good. I really think you'd like it.
Look, the amount of content, and I've been spending most of the last 2 years in Los Angeles dealing with people in the industry and film and whatever. The amount of content that's in the works, it's huge. All the scripted stuff, of course, is shut down, but there's non-scripted stuff on their way. And Spielberg just dropped a 4-part series on Encounters called Encounters on Contact. I haven't been able to get to it yet. I mean, there's so much going on.
Where is that showing?
I don't know. Just Google where to watch Encounters. Or where to watch Encounters by Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
This is the follow-up to his scripted 20-hour series Taken in 2002.
That was
great.
This
is, I think, non-scripted. This is, I think, he's covering 4 major contact stories. This is a big deal. Yeah. The Hollywood and the film industry is about to go nuts on this issue, but it's tricky. And I had some very good things in the works, and the pandemic and the strike kind of just screwed it all up for me and everybody else. But I hope to have something soon, and I hope to have more projects in the works. I mean, there's 3 or 4 that I'm working on, and it's all about connecting all the people in this field that have been doing the work all these years, right? Carrying the water, and the film industry, and getting them all together, saying, hey, how about let's use a lot of that money and that tech and all that good stuff you have to portray this issue and cover it and do incredible docs and inform the world and still make tons of money, as opposed to keeping your distance because you don't want to offend the government, so they won't give you an aircraft carrier when you make a military type movie or whatever the hell. And I'm working on that, and it's a bridging kind of thing. We'll see.
I think at this point it's time to begin our giveaway. We've had the URL up on the screen for about half an hour. And so if one of the mods wants to join us in here, I will send the invitation link to oh, there we go. Very simple, very easy. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Canadian Spider-Man. Hello, sir.
Hi. Hello, Cardinal Sin. Hello, Steve. Thank you for joining us. It's fantastic to listen to you.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you.
Very engaging.
I can't take credit for the Cardinal Sin prize wheel. Anti-derivative Jill has made that. And let me just go ahead and check the private chat and pull up the make sure it's the most recent one. Oh, Jill, if you're watching, if you could drop that in the link, that would be fantastic. Drop that in the private chat, and then I can put that and share that with Cardinal Sin.
Are you looking for the URL?
The prize wheel that is normally in the private chat there, Cardinal Sin.
Okay.
And it's not there as of yet.
When Twitter pulled its new nonsense, I lost all of my groups, all of my, I think there were 3 conversations that I'd been having for a long time. So I'm kind of carefully reconstructing everything, and I'm not sure how to get back to it. That is a very fancy looking shirt you have on there, Canadian Spider-Man.
I love this shirt. If I can show you it off a little bit.
By all means. The Mod Squad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I lost the Mod Squad chat. So.
No, fantastic. Cardinal Sin, I'm not sure what to tell you. Normally it pops right up in the chat, and Jill has it right in the chat, but it is not there.
Do you have a way to contact Jill?
Just through private messaging, and I haven't heard back from her yet. Unfortunately.
Do you know? So you don't know how many names we have on the wheel?
I do not know how, but I mean, we have alternative ways. If you wanted to have your chat drop something in the like a 1 or something in the chat, I could. Oh no, Jill is here. She just private messaged me. She says talk amongst ourselves, and she's getting it ready.
Excellent.
Yes.
Very good.
And so, is there anything that about this particular stream that you wanted to discuss more or ask another question, Cardinal Sin?
Well, while she's doing that, let me update people on what's coming up.
Sure,
okay?
Please.
Absolutely.
A couple of things. First of all, major conference is coming up in Las Vegas, November 10 to 12. It's called Stairway to the Stars. It's going to be at the Luxor Hotel. It's going to be a pretty big deal. I'll be speaking, but so will many of my colleagues. Huge deal. November 10 to 12. You can find it by going to disclosurefest.org or just Google Stairway to the Stars. And then there is another major conference, Mexico City, December 1 to 3. I will be there. World Ufology Conference. And again, understand, these conferences may take place after disclosure. I mean, just kind of imagine that.
That'd be cool.
We are starting to gear up. We're about to start promoting the Contact in the Desert for Indian Wells for next June. Very soon. Look for that to go up pretty quickly. And then on October 3, Danny Sheehan and I are going to be doing a free presentation online, sponsored by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library, and that's October 3. And a link for that's going to go up pretty soon, but it's going to be me and Danny essentially going over and discussing the history of this recent years and the political processes underway and where they're going. So that'll be pretty special, and that'll be free to everybody, and that'll be online. And that's kind of it right now. I have a couple other announcements I'll be making fairly soon about some other projects. And there's other events. If you go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, under resources, you can see upcoming conferences, as well as the print media archive, of course, as my speaking events. You can find those as well. I've got to update that. It's quite a few missing, but and that's pretty much it. Other than disclosure could happen next month. I mean, that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say under
resources?
Under resources, yeah.
I dropped the link in the chat for the upcoming conference in November.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I think you're still under issues there. You want to go over to resources. Just hover over that. There it is. You should see it come down to conferences upcoming. There's other events.
Yeah.
There's going to be even bigger conferences next year for sure. Next year is going to be a massive thing. And hope it's going to be hopefully a celebration. 2024 will be 1 year of celebration of the disclosure event, and the World Disclosure Day, which I currently have pegged to July the 8th. There is a website, worlddisclosureday.org. Will be changed to the date.
Already set up to be a busy bee.
Oh yeah. I could use a little busy. I've not been busy enough, but yeah, I'll change the date of the World Disclosure Day to the date the president makes the announcement, which will hopefully be September something. It would be nice.
That'd be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I have the compliments of anti-derivative Jill. I do have the prize wheel, Cardinal Sen.
All right, let's see it.
Into the Fringe. I'm going to share audio. Sharing into the Fringe giveaway prize.
And the first one that we're going to give away is the Paul Stonehill lecture.
Paul, the Russian research. Yeah, that's getting a lot of attention right now. Here it comes.
Now, Steve, as you know, this is the part of the show that I don't look forward to the most.
Okay,
because
ready when you are.
When the head spins around, it reminds me of The Exorcist. But go ahead and spin that wheel whenever you're ready, Canadian Spider-Man.
Here we go. There we go.
PJ Bear.
Nice.
Congratulations. There we go. And can you take PJ Bear off the wheel for the next spin?
Yes, I can.
This next one will be the Richard Dolan lecture, and he's always good. And I wanted to, before we spin the second one, I wanted to let everyone know that for you to receive the prize, I need you to get in touch with me on Twitter at Gil Bavell or email me at gil@sunflower.com, which I've misspelled. And send me your mailing address, and I'll go ahead and get your prize out in the mail to you. Okay, let's go ahead and spin that wheel again.
All right.
Good name.
Monster Hunter's Rune. Congratulations.
Nice. Congratulations.
All right. And then we have, for the last prize, the Incredible Disclosures panel. And this is with Sid Goldberg, Richard Dolan, Richard Doty, and Daniel Sheehan. And I just watched this last night. Not this copy. This is a new copy. So let's go ahead and share that wheel. And let's give it a spin and see who wins.
I was very gratified that all the conferences started having disclosure panels.
Yeah, right? Radioactive. Yay.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Fantastic radioactive.
And Monster Huntress Rune seems to be happy enough with that. All right. Very good. And like I said, make sure and get in touch with me at Gil Bavell on Twitter, or email me at gil@sunflower.com. Just like it says here, but without the F. Oh, God. What is happening to me? And Stephen, I wanted to thank you again for coming on. You are a fan favorite here on Into the Fringe, and I hope that we can look forward to you returning to us soon, and disclosure sooner rather than later.
Yes, and one last thing. I know some people have mixed feelings about Twitter, but it's an incredibly powerful activist tool. And so I can't have too many Twitter followers. So please follow me at Steve Bassett, please. And retweet.
Easy enough.
An easy one. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Sail on, ad astra and all that.
Ad astra per aspera is the state motto of Kansas.
Works for me.
There you go. All right. Well, for Canadian Spider-Man and Stephen Bassett, it's Cardinal Sin out.